You don't even know me, yet you stopped your whole life just to help me. I don't know what kind of man you are, but a man who would do this for a stranger is someone worth knowing. Your train is leaving, and you still chose to stay here with me. I've never met a man who would give up his own way out just to make sure a woman wasn't left alone.
I missed my train because of her, and it turned out to be the best mistake of my life. I had a one-way ticket, a duffel bag, and every intention of leaving my hometown forever on the 540 eastbound. Then a woman I'd never once spoken to slipped on the ice right in front of me, and I made a choice that took about 4 seconds and rearranged the whole rest of my life. I missed my train. Best mistake I ever made. Let me tell you how it happened. My name is Sam Hoyt. I'm 39, and I was born and raised in Dunmore, Montana, a wheat town on the High Line, up where the prairie runs flat to Canada, and the only thing between you and the North Pole is a barbed wire fence and a bad attitude. There've been Hoyts on the same section of ground out there since 1911. When my great-grandfather proved up a homestead, the government was near giving away to anybody fool enough to try and farm it. 4 generations we held that land, and I lost it. I need to say that plain, because it's the whole reason I was standing on a frozen depot platform at 5 in the morning trying to sneak out of my own life. 2 bad years of drought, a hailstorm that flattened the one good crop in between, and a note at the bank my daddy had signed and I'd inherited along with the dirt. The bank was patient right up until it wasn't. That fall they foreclosed on the Hoyt place, and some outfit out of Billings bought it at auction for less than the machinery was worth. And just like that, 113 years came to an end on my watch. I was the Hoyt who lost the land. You have to be from a place like Dunmore to know what that is. It's not a money problem. It's a name problem. Every man in that town measured himself by whether he'd held on to his grandfather's ground, and I hadn't, and I could not walk into the co-op or the church or the Legion Hall and feel one single pair of eyes without knowing exactly what those eyes were thinking. There's Sam Hoyt, lost the home place, so I did the math a beat man does. There was work 3 states east, in the Bakken oil patch across the North Dakota line. Refinery work, roughneck work, the kind of job a broke farmer takes when the farming's done. Good money, and nobody knowing your name. I bought a one-way ticket on the Empire Builder, packed 1 bag, and I chose the 540 in the dark on purpose, before the town was awake, so I wouldn't have to say goodbye to a soul or watch anybody's face while I left. I figured I'd slip out of Dunmore the way you slip out of a room where you've embarrassed yourself. Quiet, ashamed, gone before the lights came up. And that's the frame of mind I was in, standing alone on that platform in the cold, watching my breath, when the café woman came out with a crate of something and hit a patch of black ice and went down hard. I want to tell you I thought about it. I didn't. That's the thing about the choice that saves your life. It doesn't feel like a choice at all. Her name was Ruby, though I didn't know it yet, and she ran the little café inside the depot. The lunch counter that had been there since the trains meant something, that everybody in Dunmore said she was a fool to have reopened. She came out onto that platform before dawn with a crate of coffee tins to get a jump on the morning, and the ice took her feet clean out, and she went down on the concrete with a sound that made my stomach turn, and the crate went everywhere, and she said a word I won't repeat, and then made a smaller sound, the kind you make when you don't want anybody to know how bad it is. The 540 was already coming. You could hear it. That big diesel note way off west, the Empire Builder rolling down the High Line right on time. And I looked at that train, my whole escape, my new nameless life, 40 seconds away. And I looked at a woman on the ice who couldn't get up. I dropped my duffel bag and went to her. "Don't move," I said. "Let me see it." "I'm fine," she started, and then she tried to put weight on the ankle and went white and gray at once and grabbed my arm. "You are extremely not fine," I said. That's a bad one. Maybe broke. The train came in behind us, all noise and lit windows and steam off the brakes, and the conductor hollered, "Dunmore 2 minutes," and I knelt there on the ice with a stranger's arm locked around mine, and I made no move at all to get up. She followed my eyes to the train, to my bag lying where I'd dropped it, and even white with pain, she put it together. "That's your train," she said. "Go. I'll be all right. Somebody'll—" "There's nobody," I said. It was true. 5 in the morning. The platform was her and me and a train. Nobody but me. "Then get on it. I'm not going to be the reason a man misses." "Ma'am," I said, "I don't rightly know your name, but I'm not fixing to leave you sitting on the ice with a broke ankle so I can go to North Dakota. My mother raised me better than the rest of my life turned out, and I stayed put." The conductor called the all aboard. I heard the doors. I heard that big train take up its own weight and start to roll, and I watched the lit windows slide by, one after another, gathering speed, carrying my one-way ticket's whole promise off down the High Line, toward a life where nobody knew I was the Hoyt who lost the land. And then it was gone, and the platform was quiet, and it was just me and a woman named Ruby on the ice in the cold, and my duffel bag, and a ticket in my shirt pocket for a train that wasn't coming back till tomorrow. I felt something I did not expect. Kneeling there, ankle deep in a stranger's spilled coffee tins with my escape rolling east without me, I felt relieved. I didn't understand it for a long while, but some animal part of me unclenched, like it had been braced against that train the whole time, and was glad it was gone. I got Ruby up and inside and onto a chair with her leg propped, and I got a bag of frozen peas from her own freezer onto the ankle, and I found out 3 things fast. It wasn't broke, but it was a bad sprain, the kind that keeps you off it a week. She ran the café alone. And the breakfast rush, such as it was in a dying town, started in 90 minutes. "I have to open," she said, trying to stand, going gray again. "I can't miss a day. I cannot afford to miss a day. You don't understand." "Sit down," I said. "I've flipped an egg before." She looked at me like I'd offered to fly the moon down. "You missed your train for me. You are not also going to—" "Lady, I've got no train, no farm, no plan, and nowhere to be for the first time in my life," I said. "You've got a café you can't stand up in, and a rush coming. Seems to me the Lord's arithmetic worked out. Now tell me where you keep the coffee filters." Her name was Ruby Vane, and I want to tell you about her, because she was the opposite of me in the one way that mattered. She'd come to Dunmore 2 years back, from Spokane, a bad divorce behind her, looking for cheap and quiet, and she'd done the single most foolish thing a person could do in a town the whole world was leaving. She'd bought the dead Depot Cafe and brought it back to life. Everybody told her she was crazy. Dunmore was drying up, they said. The young people were gone. The farms were consolidating. Half the storefronts on Main were boarded. Who reopens a cafe in a town that's dying? Ruby did, because Ruby had decided something I hadn't. She'd decided that a place is only dead when the last person quits on it, and she wasn't going to be one more person quitting. "Everybody around here talks about this town like it's already in the ground," she told me that first morning, hobbling on a chair, directing me around her own kitchen. "The bank quit on it. The young folks quit on it. Every year another family packs up and gets on that eastbound and doesn't come back." She flipped a pancake by reaching, wincing. I got so tired of watching people leave that I decided to be the one who stayed. Somebody's got to keep a light on and the coffee hot, or the whole place just stops. So that's me, the fool with the cafe. And I stood there at her griddle, a man who'd bought a one-way ticket east not 2 hours before, and I couldn't meet her eye, because I was exactly what she was describing. One more Dunmore man on the eastbound, quitting the town, gone before the lights came up. I stayed the day. Then, because she still couldn't stand, I stayed the next. There wasn't another eastbound till the following night anyhow, and my ticket was good for it, and I kept telling myself I'd catch that one. I didn't catch that one either. Here's what a week of running a dying town's cafe teaches you. It teaches you who's left. Because they all came in. The holdouts. The ones who hadn't quit Dunmore. Old Walt Perlick, who farmed till his knees gave and now just came for the coffee and the company. The Nybergs, who'd cut their operation to nothing but hung on. The school teacher, Miss Aldous, keeping a school open with 11 students by sheer will. They came in every morning to Ruby's counter, and I cooked their eggs, and I heard the town talk, and it was not the talk I'd been so afraid of. Nobody said there's Sam Hoyt who lost the land. You know what they said? They said, "Sam Hoyt, is that you behind the counter? Lord boy, I'm sorry about your place. The bank did you dirty. That drought have broke Job himself." And Walt Perlick, who'd known my grandfather, gripped my wrist across the counter and said, "You held on 2 years longer than any man could have. There's no shame in getting broke by weather. The shamed have been quitting while there was still a crop to plant. You didn't quit. The sky quit on you. I had to go stand in the walk-in cooler a minute after that one, because I'd built a whole flight out of a shame that lived mostly in my own head. I'd been so certain the town was measuring me and finding me short, and it turned out the town wasn't the bank. The town was Walt Perlick gripping my wrist. The town was people who'd known 4 generations of Hoyts and grieved the land alongside me. The only person in Dunmore holding my failure against me was me, and I'd very nearly gotten on a train to escape a jury that had already acquitted me. That ticket, though, I kept it in my shirt pocket, good for the next eastbound, and the next, and the next. Every night I told myself I'd use it tomorrow. And every morning there was a rush, and Ruby's ankle, and Walt's coffee, and one more reason to stay one more day. Ruby healed up and I should have gone, and I didn't, and neither of us talked about it. She tried to pay me, that second week, once she was back on her feet. I wouldn't take it. She got fierce about it. Ruby got fierce about things, and I said, "Ruby, you're barely keeping the lights on. I've watched the till. You can't pay me, and you know it. Let me be useful a while. I've got nothing else I'm good for right now." "That's not a way for a man to live," she said. "Working for nothing. It's the first thing that's felt like anything since the auction," I said, and it came out more honest than I meant it to, and she went quiet. Because here's what I'd figured out, and it near knocked me flat. Ruby Vane was carrying that whole dying town on her back, alone, by choice, and running herself into the ground doing it. She opened at 5 and closed at 8, and did the books till midnight, and the cafe still barely broke even, and she wouldn't let a soul help, because letting people help meant depending on people, and people, in Ruby's experience, left. Her husband left. Her folks left. Everybody gets on the eastbound eventually. So she'd decided to need nobody, and to keep the light on all by herself, and it was killing her by inches. She was the stayer who couldn't lean, and I was the lever who couldn't fail in front of anybody, and I don't know that 2 more stubborn people ever cooked breakfast in the same 12 feet of Montana. The turn came about 3 weeks in, on a bad night, and it was the ticket that caused it. The cafe's old cooler compressor died, the big one, the one that keeps the whole operation legal, and to replace it was $1,100 Ruby Flat did not have. I watched her sit at the counter after close with the repair estimate and her sad little ledger, and go somewhere far away, the look of a person doing the math and coming up short. And I knew that look, because I'd worn it for 2 years at my own kitchen table. "How bad?" I said. "I can't cover it," she said, flat. "If the cooler's out, I fail inspection. If I fail inspection, I close. If I close a week, I don't reopen." She laughed, and it wasn't a laugh. Turns out the fool with the cafe was just the fool. Everybody told me, "Dunmore's dying, and you can't keep a light on with your own 2 hands. And I did a thing I'm not proud of the shape of, though I'm proud of where it ended up. I took the train ticket out of my shirt pocket. It was worth something. A long-haul Empire Builder fare. Refundable. Not 1,100, but 300 and some, and I had a little cash besides from selling my truck before I left. And between them, "What are you doing?" Ruby said, watching me set that ticket on the counter. "This is a train ticket to a life I was running to because I was ashamed," I said. "I've been carrying it 3 weeks, telling myself I'd use it tomorrow. I'm done telling myself that." I slid it toward her. "Cash it in. It's 300 toward your cooler. I've got the rest." Ruby stared at the ticket like it might bite her. "No," she said. "Absolutely not. That's your way out, Sam. That's your... I'm not going to be the reason you can't leave. First the train, now this. I will not be another anchor on a man who's trying to get somewhere. Ruby." "People leave," she said, and her voice cracked on it, the whole wall coming down at once. "That's the one thing I know for certain. Everybody I ever counted on got on that eastbound and didn't look back. And I built this whole life so I would never again need one single person who was just going to leave. And now there's you, and you missed a train for me, and you've cooked my eggs for 3 weeks for free, and you want to burn your ticket on my cooler, and I can't let myself need that, because you're going to leave too. They all leave, and I'll have gotten used to you, and that's how it kills you." "I'm not leaving," I said. She stopped. "Ruby, I've had a ticket in my pocket for 3 weeks, and I haven't used it," I said. "You think I'm still here because of your ankle. Your ankle healed a fortnight ago. I'm here because for the first time since the bank took my grandfather's ground, I've felt like I was worth something to somebody, and it's happened every single morning behind your counter." My throat had gone to gravel. I was running because I lost a farm and thought that made me nothing, and I stopped running the second I found a person who needed keeping the light on more than I needed to hide. "I'm not your husband, Ruby. I'm not your folks. I don't get on eastbounds. I missed the one that mattered on purpose, whether I knew it or not." Ruby Vane put her face in her hands and cried, right there at her own counter, over a dead compressor and a burned ticket and 3 weeks of eggs. "That's not fair," she said into her hands. "I made myself not need anybody. It took me 2 years, and you just—" "I know," I said. "Rotten timing. Cash the ticket." She cashed the ticket. I put in the rest. We fixed the cooler, and the next morning I went behind the counter without either of us saying a word about wages or trains, and that was that. I'd chosen. She'd let me. 2 stubborn people, 1 griddle. I wish I could tell you it was smooth after. It wasn't, and I'll give you the true version. The hard part came in March, and it was mine, and it was the land. The outfit from Billings that bought my grandfather's place. Turned out they didn't want to farm it themselves. They wanted a local man who knew that ground to work it on shares, and they came asking around, and Walt Perlich sent them to Ruby's Café, and one morning a fellow in a good jacket sat at my counter and offered me the job of farming the Hoyt place. Not owning it, working it. For them. I want you to understand what that did to me. To work my own grandfather's ground as a hired man. To plant a crop I didn't own on dirt that had my name on it for 100 years. I about came apart. That night I stood out behind the cafe in the cold, and I thought seriously about finding another eastbound, because it felt like the deepest shame yet, worse than losing it, keeping it running for somebody else. My daddy would have... Ruby came out and stood next to me in the cold. She didn't fix it. She just stood there a while, and then she said, "You're doing the leaving thing in your head. I can see it on you. To work my own land for a stranger," I said. "It's the last humiliation, Ruby." Or, she said, "It's 113 years of Hoyts, keeping that ground alive, and you get to be the one who doesn't let it go to a stranger who'd farm it wrong." She took my hand. You keep telling me your worth was the deed. It wasn't the deed, Sam. It was never the deed. It was that you love that dirt and you know how to make it grow. The bank took the paper. It couldn't take the loving or the knowing. Those are still yours. Go plant your grandfather's ground. Not because you failed, because you're the only one left who'll do it right. I didn't answer for a long while. Then I said, that's a hard way to look at it. I run a café in a town everybody says is dead, Ruby said. Hard ways to look at things are my whole religion. I took the job. And I want to tell you, the first morning I walked that ground as the man who worked it, I braced for the shame to gut me, and instead, kneeling down and taking up a handful of my grandfather's dirt, I felt him close by, and it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like I'd come home the long way round. The deed was gone. The love wasn't. Ruby was right, the way she was aggravatingly often right. So I farmed the Hoyt place by day and helped Ruby keep the light on by night. And somewhere in the plowing and the pancakes, I fell all the way in love with the fool who'd bet on a dying town. And she, slower, because she'd sworn off needing anybody, fell in love back, one unleaned-on inch at a time. She got spooked twice that spring. Woke up one morning certain I'd get on an eastbound eventually the way everyone did, and went cold and busy and wouldn't look at me. And I didn't chase her and I didn't leave. I just kept showing up at 5 to cook. On the third cold morning, I set the cashed-in ticket receipt on the counter in front of her. I'd kept it, that little slip. And I said, I burned my way out 3 months ago and put it into your cooler. A man doesn't destroy his own exit and then plan to use it. Get used to me, Ruby. I'm the one that stayed. It happened less after that. Turns out you don't cure a woman who's braced for everyone to leave by promising real hard. You cure her by being there at 5 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock the next day, and the day after, until her bones stop flinching. We married the next fall, in the Depot Cafe, because where else? Walt Perlich gave Ruby away. She had nobody to do it, and he volunteered before she could ask, which set her off crying into the wedding pie. Miss Aldous brought all 11 of her schoolchildren to sing. The whole town that everybody said was dead packed into that little lunch counter, which, if you ask me, is a strange definition of dead. Ruby said Dunmore was only dying while people kept quitting on it, and here was a room full of people who hadn't, and it looked a lot like living to me. We framed the train ticket. Not the receipt. I'd found the actual stub the conductor never collected, still in the bag I'd dropped on the ice. Dunmore to the Bakken, one way. We put it in a little frame and hung it over the cafe door, and under it Ruby lettered a card in her neat hand. The best train I ever missed. Everybody who comes in asks about it, and I get to tell them. I still farm the Hoyt ground. Never got the deed back. That's not the kind of story this is, and I've made my peace with it. But I keep 113 years of my family's dirt alive and growing, and my grandfather, wherever he is, knows a Hoyt's still on that section, and that's worth more than a piece of paper at the bank. And every night I come home to a cafe with the light on and the coffee hot, and a woman who bet on a dying town and won. Because it turns out, a place is only dead when the last person quits, and neither one of us is the quitting kind anymore. That's the thing I'd tell the man on the platform, white-knuckling his one-way ticket, so sure the kindest thing he could do was disappear before the lights came up. Your failure lives mostly in your own head. The town you're fleeing already forgave you. And the worst thing that can happen to a man isn't losing the farm. It's getting on the eastbound to run from the shame and rolling right past the whole rest of his life, while it slips on the ice behind him, needing a hand he was too busy running to give. Home was never the deed. I know that now. Home was a train I was blessed enough to miss, and a woman on the ice who needed keeping, and a light I get to help hold up in a town too stubborn to die. So let me ask you something before I go. Is there an eastbound in your life right now? A train you've got a ticket for? A way out you're telling yourself you'll take tomorrow, because staying and facing folks feels like more than you can bear. I bought mine in the dark so nobody'd see me go. And I'd have used it too, if a stranger hadn't slipped on the ice and shown me that the shame I was running from was mostly a jury of one. If you're carrying a ticket like that, I hope you'll think hard before you punch it. Tell me about it down in the comments. I read a lot more of them than you'd guess, and here's the one that sits closest to me. Have you decided, somewhere along the way, to never need anybody, because everybody you counted on got on their own eastbound and left? I married a woman who did exactly that, and I'll tell you what melted it. Not a promise, just somebody who showed up at 5 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock again, until her bones believed it. If you've walled yourself off from being left, I hope somebody stubborn shows up at your counter and won't quit, and I hope you let them. If you'd like to keep the coffee hot with us a while, we've got a members side going. A short story every week, quiet ones, no ads, just for the folks who make a habit of coming back. And if this one found you tonight, leave a like and hit subscribe on your way out. Some trains are a mercy to miss. I'll see you next time.